Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode, we're talking about the Life Domain Cleric. If you like what we do here, please like, share, and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you guys. Please keep commenting. We'd love to hear the stories of some of the characters you've made, some of the concepts you come up with, and some of the great experience you've had playing them. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So I'm going to do things a little different this time around. I'm going to talk a little bit about why anyone would play this subclass. Because full disclosure, I hate supports and I hate healing. I understand how important it is, and I'm very grateful when there is one in the party or one in the group. It is just not for me. I don't enjoy it. It seems just very taxing on me, and there's just very little fulfillment I get out of that. So for me to play this subclass or even consider anything involving this subclass, I really had to dig deep and find a concept that really worked for me. So what I'm gonna really dive into is the deity and the cleric relationship and why that's so important, because I feel like your deity should really say a lot about your cleric, and it shouldn't just be like an abstract concept like, oh, like I worship this deity and here's all my power and I follow their laws and respect their domain and try and keep within their teachings. But that just isn't really going to do it for here, because you're a life domain cleric. You're caring about healing and sustaining life and just being kind of anti-undead. And that really limits my reasoning to ever play this class. So I really dig down and I came up with something I think is really, really cool. So your deity's connection to your cleric is very, very important. You gain everything from a cleric as a reward for your devoutness to this deity and this domain. So I thought of this concept of what would make me really want to play this subclass, and it really was the deity. I love playing warlock, so there's a profound connection there. What I thought was any normal life domain deity really wouldn't do it for me, so I tried to imagine something that would really fit in the Sinister Heroes kind of a fashion. And so I came up with this deity whose life force is the actual healing that's done. So it almost pains this deity to heal others, but it understands the value of life. So it makes that sacrifice constantly. And I like to believe another deity saw that and took advantage of it, and somehow shackled this deity and made it so that way the divine essence that flows to each deity from its followers and the prayers that it receives, that divine energy, empowers the shackles as much as it empowers the deity. So these shackles cannot be broken, and whenever the healing is done in this deity's name, it's drawn out of her, like almost against the deity's will. I know I said her, it could be man, could be whatever you want it to be. And so this concept of this imprisoned deity really like connected with me. And I got this idea that what if you were a person who was going through a life experience and you almost died, and you had one opportunity to save either yourself or someone else, and you chose to save someone else, and that's what connected you to the deity. Because the deity somehow gotten like Stockholm syndrome and understood that though it's suffering, it's for the greater good of everyone else, that it stays where it is because they can all receive the divine energy. And your hero connects and understands that point. And you get this lovely like triad of like difficulties because you're loyal to your deity and you know you cannot break that. So maybe you take a vow to never heal yourself, and it pains you to know that you're hurting your deity to heal others, but it's necessary for whatever circumstances you find yourself adventuring. And you have a loyalty to your actual religious group, whatever clergy it is you belong to that follow this domain. For you to destroy that would destroy so much more in the world. And then your loyalty to your true ambition, whatever it was that caused you to be a hero, whatever it is you have to fight in order to sustain whatever world you're in or whatever circumstance you're trying to avenge. And between those three things, understanding that you're healing, it hurts you to hurt your deity so much, but you have to do it. And then now healing has a meaning to it, because it's painful to you. It's a sadness. It's something that your deity forgives you for doing and encourages you to do because it's for the greater good, and you know how wrong it is. And I thought that drew me into playing a life domain cleric. With a connection to your deity that's so profound that it grants you the ability of the cleric, it really matters what that connection is. And when you make that connection, you do gain bonuses. So at first level, you gain bonus proficiency in heavy armor, which is great. Make yourself really tanky. Really fulfills kind of that concept that I mentioned earlier, because now you have a reason to be in the front lines, because it's better for you to be hurt than to have to heal anyone else. So you take the damage and you take the pain because you know you're going to endure, because it's so much more important to not squander that valuable resource that you have. You also gain discipline of life at first level. Starting at first level, your healing spells are more effective. Whenever you use a spell of first level or higher to restore hit points to a creature, that creature regains additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. This is where that guild comes in. This is where your character really starts to... If you take combat and make it something more than just a numerical strategic map and take it as an RP moment, you can really value this and make it so that way it reinforces how important your deity is and how great the essence is that she has it, or he has, that gives out this healing energy. And it really brings that like really to the forefront, because your healing will always be better than other classes' healing, no matter what it is, because it's always going to be stronger because of your connection to your deity. And I love that idea, especially when it carries a weight to it to make you restrict your own uses for it, so you can do other things. But I think it really fits with your character. At second level, you gain your channel divinity for a life domain cleric called Preserve Life. As an action, you present your holy symbol and invoke healing energy that can restore a number of hit points equal to 5 times your cleric level. Choose any creature within 30 feet of you and divide those hit points among them. This feature can restore a creature to no more than half its hit point maximum, and you can't use this feature on an undead or construct. This is just a big healing spell. If you have a lot of people that are down, this is perfect for that, because you can immediately bring up huge numbers of people. It does cost your channel divinity. It is a very big resource for you to have, but considering you're a life domain cleric, your really own uses are turn undead and preserve life, which is fitting thematically. But understand, if you were fighting in a situation where things are going really bad and you have 3 or 4 people down, drop this, bring them all up, and try to get out of dodge. This is a great circumstance for that, and it's just great at any point. The smaller the size of your party, obviously the bigger this is. If you have 4 people, 10 HP at second level to divvy out to whoever you want is kind of a big deal. That makes a very big difference. And when you hit up to 20th level, that's 100 HP you can give back. It's big, it's important. You get a certain amount of uses because it's linked to your channel divinity. It's a great way to keep everybody up. I just don't like healing people. At 6th level, you gain access to Blessed Healer. The healing spells you cast on others heal you as well. When you cast a spell of 1st level or higher that restores hit points to a creature other than you, you regain hit points equal to 2 plus the spell level. This is very, very cool from a mechanical standpoint, because this really gives you free healing on yourself to keep yourself going. It helps out your party because it limits the amount of resources you would have to use. If you're following along and you kind of wanted to do something similar to the deity and the connection to the cleric that I had mentioned, this creates a wonderful moment where if your DM is very cool with stuff like this, or if maybe it's some sort of arc or something, your deity speaks to you. And it kind of shows that deity's like Stockholm Syndrome, where it understands how great you're doing and how you're striving to fulfill that deity's wishes. And it refuses to let you go following this vow because that deity thinks it's wrong. And it understands how valuable you are. So it forces you to drain more of its essence to sustain yourself, whether you want it or not. And it makes your character have this great moment where you have to answer the question, at what point does faith go too far? At what point does caring for someone continuously mean hurting them because it's their wish? And you can really suss that out and really create something very, very cool with your character. Again, that's all dependent on what kind of DM you're playing with, or how you guys work your abilities. But I think it's a wonderful ability to make everything you do have more meaning. Like, you can really connect your abilities to something like this, or something along that lines of that connection to a deity that just this wonderful blessing to you that you just have to have, and you can work that into making your spells that much more meaningful and that much more impactful, and see this, like, this genuine goodness occur, that you heal someone else and, like, part of you shines, and, like, that feels good to you because maybe you really needed it. And maybe you're holding true to that vow to just never use healing for yourself because all life is important to you. And it's a cool moment if you are willing to go that far with role playing. And if you are, great. At 8th level, you gain access to Divine Strike. You gain the ability to infuse your weapon strikes with divine energy. Once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can cause the attack to deal an additional 1d8 radiant damage to the target. When you reach 14th level, the extra damage is increased to 2d8. You are a life domain cleric. Yes, you can use a shield, and yes, you can wear heavy armor, but your weapon selections are limited to simple weapons. From a mathematical min-maxer point of view, this really isn't your strong suit. Understand, this is something that if you run out of spell slots, if you run out of abilities, this keeps you at least doing something. Because 1d8 plus 1d6 plus whatever your modifier is a lot better than just 1d6. It's radiant damage, so it's great against the natural enemies of the life domain cleric, so it works in your favor. Don't sleep on it too much. If you have to, it does give you an opportunity to jump in front and kind of keep pace with everything else. And at 14th level, 2d8 plus whatever your weapon you're wielding and whatever that modifier is, it's not great, but you most likely will be using spiritual weapon anyway if you weren't healing. So the damage is out there if you really want to work towards something to really build that up. It is one attack you get to make, so understandably, it's not a super optimal point of view from a min-maxer. Hitting something with radiant damage because you hit him in the face is always a good feeling in my book. At 17th level, you gain access to Supreme Healing. When you would normally roll one or more dice to restore hit points with a spell, you instead use the highest number possible for each dice. For example, instead of rolling 2d6 hit points to a creature, you restore 12. This is the most powerful healing ability in the game, in my opinion. There are great healing spells, there are great healing abilities, but to always roll the maximum amount is impressive. You'll never get that with anything else. You'll hit numbers with this, you won't hit with any other spells. So really understand the gravity of that. That being said, if I was your DM and you were playing this character that I had depicted with that relationship to that specific deity, I would probably pull quite the con on you and make it so that this deity was preparing your body to be sacrificed so it can control you. Because it's a life domain deity, and life is important. But nobody ever said whose life. And if you devoted your whole life to this deity, freeing it would give that great, incredible sustenance and that final act of true devotion. And maybe you survive and, you know, you're trapped in a different astral dimension or whatever domain world that deity was at previously, or you swap places and now your essence is being drawn out. I mean, that's the kind of like an ending kind of the thing that I would do, maybe. It's probably horrible to the players who would do that, but I think it's also a great concept. And I love it when DMs kind of pull the wool over your eyes with stuff like that. I just think it's cool. But Supreme Healing, it's great. You're just always going to do the highest amount of healing humanly possible. There's no downside to it. Our final thoughts. The Life Domain Cleric gives you a lot of incredible healing. It makes it super easy to keep the party up. D&D is not really meant to be the game where you cast healing spells every turn. You are always going to be better off taking enemies off the field than you are healing constantly. It's just how the game is built. If there are 6 enemies on the board and you take 3 of them off with a spell, it's way better than healing for 3 rounds and taking 6 enemies worth of attacks. It's how the math works. Your healing being extremely powerful is very viable outside of combat. Or of vitality, things like that, where you can just continuously just keep casting and casting and casting for like a minute, is gonna give you a huge amount of hit points to restore your party. You can do a lot very quickly with that. It's all healing, not my thing. So I really came to an understanding that I'd have to make this mine in order for me to ever want to play this class or ever really want to talk about this class. And I've been dreading it for a long time. I really like the idea of a deity that's in prison. I love that it's still trying to do goodness and still trying to not cause harm into the world and still trying to be this wonderfully beautiful moving force that's for the good of the world, even though its situation is only going to get worse the more successful it is. That kind of sacrifice for the greater good really speaks volumes to me, and I wish things like that were real, because it might inspire people to be better all the time. But I like that idea, and I like being the only person that knows the truth and wrestling with that and having to face your superiors going, no, you're wrong, but if I tell you, it'll hurt everyone, and I can't risk that. And like, I think that's beautiful. I think that's a wonderful setup for a character with real depth of like personality, emotion, and conflict. And I think that's a lot to work with the DM. I think a DM having a cleric in the party is a great opportunity to always have someone that can move the party in a direction, or like suggest a good course of action, because a deity can just speak to you and say, I need you to help do this, or I need you to not do that, or why are you not following the task? And it makes your DM's job a little easier. And having a Life Domain Cleric, especially if you're in a party with a lot of new players, is going to make them feel more comfortable, which is probably a bad thing, because they're going to take a lot of unnecessary risks. But every risk they take, they learn something. And it's a great thing for a group of new players to have some incredible safety net like this kind of a cleric. So with that said, it's time to bring this video to an end. And thank you all for liking, sharing, subscribing, and if you made it this far, truly thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.